Good afternoon. Appreciate you guys getting here on a Tuesday afternoon. Midweek game, so a little bit different change in our schedule, but really excited about the opportunity to go down and face a really good opponent in Georgia Southern. Got a huge amount of respect for Coach Helton, not only what he's done at Georgia Southern, but what he's done in his career. He and his family are obviously very well known in the football world, have done some really good things. A lot of respect for him. His team's well coached. We got an appropriate fear for these guys. These guys are a good football team. Obviously, with the transfer portal, there's some guys that we have familiarity with as far as played last year at another place. But there are some new guys that are making some plays. You can kind of see the identity of a Coach Helton football team, which is really complex offensively, really physical and big on the defensive side, and then well coached in the special teams game. So it's going to be a huge challenge for us. Obviously going on the road. Polson Stadium is one of the best college football atmospheres in all of college sports. They do a really good job, especially on a Thursday night. I'm sure the fans will be excited. The team has obviously done some good things at home, so they play well at home, so we got to be prepared for that. Offensively, they stress you. I think I said it before, anytime you got a quarterback, you got a chance. J.C. French has been in the system multiple years, has done a really good job. You can tell he fully understands the system. The coaches have done a really good job of helping him become more comfortable with the system by giving him some flexibility to check plays and make certain throws. Doesn't make a lot of mistakes, has the ability to move in the pocket, has enough mobility to keep you balanced. You can't just rush past him because he can step up and take off. He's a physical runner. He'll put his shoulder down. He'll dive for extra yards. So a lot of respect for him as a player. And then defensively, they're big. So when they create size matchups for you, it creates a little bit of an issue as far as moving guys in the run game, protecting guys. You start to see as the game goes on, these guys wear you down, so they start making more and more tackles behind the line of scrimmage. So we've got to do a really good job. We've had a phenomenal week of practice. Now we've got to take it into the arena, and the arena changes a little bit when you go on the road. It definitely changes a little bit with a Thursday game, so we've been talking to our guys all week. Today is really Thursday in our game week, although it's Tuesday. So balancing that, logistically with classes, and it's Tuesday, but it's really Thursday. What do I do on my Tuesday routine from an academic standpoint? What do I do on my Thursday routine from a game standpoint? I think our guys have handled it well, and now we got to go play.
Coach, I was Southern Miss and Georgia Southern haven't met before in the Sun Belt, but I know that you have experience going to that stadium. What about that place is so hard to play at? Because historically they're really good at home.
Yeah, I think, a lot of times when you say a stadium is difficult to play at, you're really giving respect to the fans and the community. And you look at Georgia Southern football for a really long time. They've had a long, passionate fan base, all the way back to their 1AA days, all the way back to the triple option days. That community really embraces the program. And when you talk about playing in a tough environment, you're talking about students, a community that really is passionate about their football team. And that's what happens. They come and support their football team. The stadium layout is really good. The fans are kind of right on top of you. The student section's right behind the visiting bench. Obviously, from a student involvement standpoint, they get a lot of engagement with their students at these games. They do a really good job of creating noise. They do a really good job of making it difficult to hear. And then again, I think the community has been so passionate about this program for a long time that there's a lot of invested interest in Georgia Southern football. Very similar to here, right? Doesn't matter, I remember playing here at the Rock, at the other place, and the record wasn't great, but there were still passionate fan bases here. I think that's what happens. It's one of the reasons why I think football in the South is important to people. And Georgia Southern, that community has really embraced that university and that football program, and they show up and support.
Follow up to that is just Braylon has already played there. Is that big for y'all, just so you know what the environment's like? That's different a Thursday night primetime game versus, I think it was a 2:30 kick when y'all played them last year?
No, it was Thursday night primetime game. It's kind of like, you ever seen the movie Freddy Krueger? That's what I've been going over the last week and a half. Every time I wake up, I'm sweating because it was like this image of 2-something on the clock, and you're up 23-0, and you don't do a good job as a coach of getting your team to finish. And although probably helped us play really well the rest of the season, It wasn't a great experience, but Braylon having played there is going to be huge. As a quarterback, whenever you get into a different arena, a different environment, it was a lot of and so you kind of look at the other side of it. It was probably 90% of our team, including myself, first time going to La Tech. It's probably the opposite now. We've probably got 70–80% of our team and organization that have been to Georgia Southern. So there's not as much, now there's a couple guys, obviously, from the past team that had been to La Tech, but a lot of us had never been there. So a lot of us, it was extremely new. But there's a little bit more familiarity with this environment, this arena. I think it has a little bit to do with it. I think ultimately, if your mental disposition is right, you can play in a parking lot. If you come in with the right mentality, if you come in understanding that obviously, no one's going to be there cheering for you. When you make a play, it's not going to be as loud as it is in a rock. If you understand that all the things that are in your control are still the same, what time you go to bed, what do you eat, how do you get ready for the game, all those things are still in your control. What happens is when you don't have the right mental disposition, now all of a sudden the environment starts to control you. If you do a really good job with your mental disposition and controlling what you control the environment. And I think obviously having adolescents, kids, it's tough to do. It's tough to do with adults. But we're trying to get our guys to have the right mental disposition. So regardless of the score, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of the environment, we prepare and train and perform with such a routine and discipline that the other things don't matter. Does it have an effect? Yeah, it has an effect because there's a huge boost of momentum that goes on when there's a play made on the other side. There's a huge boost of momentum that goes on when we make a play here in the Rock. But momentum doesn't make the next play. Your mental disposition, your fundamentals, your discipline, and your techniques makes the next play. So getting our guys to focus on that would be a big piece of what we try to do this week.
Coach, off of that, the mental disposition, probably lesson learned from the La Tech thing. You said y'all had a great week of practice. Have you seen that trickle down from you guys, but your coaching staff, but your players, your leaders?
Yeah, and like I say, it's tough as a coach because we don't have a bad team. So it's hard to get the players to understand the difference between having a really good week of practice and then just having a solid week of practice, because there's not a lot of drop balls, there's not a lot of MAs, there's not a lot of guys going the wrong way. But now that we can reflect on the two, they can clearly see the difference. And the leaders have taken charge of making sure the energy is right at practice, making sure guys are watching film after practice, making sure guys are doing their walkthroughs. At the start of every practice, one of the seniors, Braylon or Chris Jones or Moten or Mike Montgomery or Jabari, they bring the team up and they make look, we got to practice right today. We got to have the right energy. And it's worked. And I've kind of let them do that because I believe if I've got to be the one that stroked the fire every practice, every game, then it's going to burn out. But if it's something that they understand and they feel, I think it's got a chance to last. Where I was disappointed last week or 2 weeks ago is I didn't do it soon enough. I kind of watched, we're catching the ball, we got a mature team. Like, I don't know if you guys ever go to an NFL game, an NFL pregame is like a pillow fight. I mean, it's, Odell's going to make a one-handed catch, and Patrick Mahomes is going to throw his ball. But those guys are professionals. So getting ready to play for them is different than a college kid. Well, sometimes if you have a mature team, getting ready to play might not be going live every period or somebody going to the ground. So you kind of, like, as you're learning your team as a coach, you're kind of like, okay, are we mature enough to prepare with the right mentality, catch the ball, go the right way? Or do we need to have that balance of energy, passion, intensity, focus, detail, communication, volume, balance with, yes, we can catch the ball, yes, we can go the right way. And I think there's a balance. There's some teams where, I know there's some coaches that start every practice with an Oklahoma drill. Well, I don't need to do that with my group, but there's a balance. If you got a group that you need to do that with, to each his own. But there's a balance, and I think the more you get to know your team, the more you go through the season with your team, you kind of know what they need. And then, for me, I'm able to help the coaches kind of because I look at it from 50,000 feet. So the coach has got, 7 or 8 guys in his room. He's looking at my 7 or 8 guys. My guys are ready to play. Well, when you're looking at it from 50,000 feet, I'm looking at 115 guys who are not ready to play, or we are ready to play because of these things. So I think it was a good learning experience. Depending on how practice goes today, we probably had the best week we've had since we've been here. I thought the best week we had was Jacksonville State. I think the bye came at a good time because they came back with a different type of snap in their eyes. Obviously, everyone knows this is conference game, so it matters, just a little bit more. To me, I tell them all of them matter because we could be, if we only win conference game, we'd be 1-4, which would not be good. But I think they're learning how to prepare. The tough part is just getting, kids to understand because you prepare at a really high level does not guarantee that you go play at a really high level. You have to be able to transfer it from the practice field and the meeting room to the arena.
Yeah, kind of speaking to that, you mentioned you guys had a really good week against Jack State, especially in the run. I wonder how the off week affected that momentum. Maybe it didn't.
No, I think again, it's hard to play in our program. It's really hard. Like it's hard work. There's always something to do. We maximize every possible hour and minute that we're allowed to do. There's not a lot of, have fun, joke around like we work. So I think the break kind of really came at a good time. Another thing that probably goes unwritten, going into a bye week off of a win helps. Everybody kind of walks around with a little bit more energy. You get a little bit more rest. Mentally, you're in a little bit better spot. So it was good for our guys. And then I think, again, as competitors, sometimes when you get a chance to take a deep breath and you're watching football, it kind of gets you ready to get back into football. I do think, although very unique, having bye week Thursday game helped because we really didn't have a chance to come back and kind of, all right, let's get loose again. Let's get ready for a game Saturday. It was like, okay, when you come back, we got to be ready to go. So I think that helped a little bit. I think also our kind of plan or routine as far as how we've structured practice from the beginning of the season, we kind of do things in our program, every 3 weeks we kind of adjust what we do at practice, how many reps, how long we're out there, what do we do, what drills. So every set of 3 weeks we've kind of adjusted a little bit. So I think the bye week fell at a good time for the adjustments that we needed to make, which allowed us to install some new things schematically, which allowed us to fix some things schematically with drills and with periods to match it, right? We can go on the board and say, all right, we're running the annexation of Puerto Rico, but if you don't get out there and drill it, you don't get out there and work it in a group, you don't get to put it in a team, you probably don't have much carryover. So we're out there really good that we were able to kind of install, regroup, restructure what we do going into this game.
Looking back at it, over the first 5 games, it's like Caden Morris has, earned a lot of trust with Braylon. How do you think he can kind of grow moving forward and really kind of help the offense with what you guys have, so many weapons?
Yeah, I think, again, anytime you talk tight ends being involved in passing game, the better you are running the ball is going to help you, right? Because they're usually involved in the run game. And they cause issues when they're really, really good blockers and good pass catchers because you're watching him. Does he block? Does he release? Okay, he blocked, but he released. So it puts the defense in a little bit of a bind. So I think the more we're able to run the ball with, efficiency is going to help the tight end passing game come open. Very seldom are we running the tight ends on, straight go balls or receiver routes. It's typically that intermediate passing game. Well, that intermediate passing game usually comes off play action. Obviously, we've got some things on the edge that help them, but when you're able to run the ball, the play action in the middle of the field opens up a little bit more. So us being able to run the ball with a lot more efficiency, I wouldn't say a lot more, but more efficiency. I think we've gotten better each week if you kind of just look at what we're doing. If we continue to improve our run game, I think that'll help our tight ends and Caden for sure.
You spoke last week, you alluded to it this week about get to a point in the season, your routine where you're finding this is what we're good at, this is what this guy does, so-and-so. You kind of relate that timeline to like previous coaching experiences with you? I mean, or you feel like,
Yeah, I think it's all thrown off because I've never been in a situation where you get 80 new players. And everyone kind of keeps reminding me like, well, you brought 21 guys from the other place. Well, them knuckleheads make mistakes too. Like your kids, just because you move from, your house to your dad's house, like they still don't take out the trash, so you still got to develop them. You still got to, yes, they know where to go, what to do, you know, when to be at certain, you know, meetings and structure, but they still have to develop. You still got to, you know, mature them. You still got to help them with their off the field issues. So it's not just, okay, you 21 guys or whatever it is are perfect. I don't have to coach you guys, I can coach the other guys. Well, they need coaching too. So I've never been in a situation where it's been 80, you know, brand new. So it's hard to say, well, last year we were at this point, you know, and we felt really good about it. I do have a feel, I think this team is probably developing and coming together a lot faster than most. I think that has a lot to do with our approach. I think that has a lot to do with they've gone to this, you know, one portal window when you get your guys in. We got a lot of our guys in December, so I think the more time you have with them helps. And again, I think when you start to have success, everyone gets a little bit more interested. That's just the reality of it. So it's hard to kind of compare because I've never been in, you know, transfer portal's new. So when we were at Alabama, you know, you're talking about guys that have been in the system for 3 and 4 years. At the other place, you know, we're talking about guys that majority of the team had been in the system for 3 or 4 years. So this one's a little bit different. But I do think we're starting to really take leaps and bounds instead of steps, if that matters, if that makes sense. A big one's gonna be Thursday night. I mean, this program hasn't won on the road in 700 plus days. And I told them after practice yesterday, this family hasn't won on the road. You know, some of the guys have been here before, some of them haven't. This family hasn't won on the road. This family's never won 4 games. So there's a lot of things that Thursday night's gonna help us kind of really find out where we are and how do we move forward, what do we learn. And it's not gonna be easy. We're not just going over to Hattiesburg High School to try to win. But it'll be a challenge, and I think our guys are up for it.
And speaking of that, you guys have that Thursday game. There's not many on that day. ESPN2. I wonder, you know, how you guys can use the opportunity to, you know, grow the program and create exposure nationally, you know, with the opportunity.
Yeah, I think anytime we get a chance, you know, to show Southern Miss in a positive light, it's our duty to represent it in the highest, you know, possible ability. Whether that's, you know, Dr. Paul getting an opportunity to go speak, you know, at an event, and you know, there's your news station and other news stations, whether that's Jeremy McLean and his staff being able to be visible. You know, we're just another lens or representation of a great university. Obviously, ours is magnified because there's a result tied to it. But we get an opportunity to go represent this great university. It's been great to us in front of a national stage. That adds to it. You don't want to go lay an egg, you know, on ESPN. You know, so that adds to the, you know, to the ability to focus and prepare the right way. Ultimately, we still got to go play a game in between white lines, and we still got to execute and find a way to play with really good discipline. But it does give us an opportunity to represent this university on a national light. There's some people that'll never see us play again, except for Thursday night, just because they're going to be watching the game and they like football. They're going to turn it on, and they may never, you know, track us the rest of the year or see us the rest of the year. So this is a great opportunity to show the world, you know, Southern Miss football and our university has a lot of positive to offer. Hopefully, it will allow us to continue to represent, you know, the university in a positive light. Obviously, football gets magnified because of, you know, the sport, but this university deserves us to go out and represent them in a really good way.
Another iteration of 4-2-5 Good Thursday this week. Are they doing the same stuff for the most part as they did the last time you were there, or they changed what they're doing in the back?
No, they've got a new defensive coordinator from the last time. Obviously, there's, you know, the structure is similar. 4-2-5 is 4-2-5. They kind of, you know, would look like us. How they package plays, what they do on third down matters. We are probably, you know, they got a bye week. I mean, I've been around groups that put a whole new defense in during a bye week, as far as not necessarily scheme, but, you know, sets. So we've kind of been preparing, you know, for, we don't want to call it chasing ghosts, but I got a lot of respect for Coach Helton. He's not sitting around with his feet up saying we're good. I can promise you that. So I know he's challenging his coaches to, you know, find different ways to be successful. They've been successful with some things. We all as coaches know that there's tendencies, and you can't keep doing the same thing every week, because obviously teams look at what you do. They know, just like we know, we have some deficiencies. You know, we can't just close our blind eye to some of the things that have hurt us. We got to find a way to fix it. So we're anticipating seeing a lot of different, you know, on both sides of the ball, just because that's what good coaches do. They've got a bye week. They got a, you know, national spotlight game. They got an opportunity to represent their university. They're not going to roll out the same game plan they had last week. So we've kind of been, as much as possible, you don't want to chase ghosts, but hey, what could they do? You know, I mean, what could be the next step for them? Trying to give our guys some extra looks with some of this extra time that we've had of, hey, this could show up, and this is how we would respond to it.
Kind of an out there question. You spoke to you're finding things that you're not necessarily good at and we're better at some things. Is it a process sometimes of, okay, we're not good at this, let's window dress it somewhat to make it more functional, or are we just gonna totally segue onto something else?
Yeah, I think there's some things you can fix during the game. There's some things you can fix the next week. And there's some things you can't fix till you get better or different players in. It's just the reality of it. When I say you can't fix it, meaning if there are certain defenses or offenses that require a guy that runs 4-2, and we don't have a guy that runs 4-2, well, we can't fix that problem right now for whatever reason. If there are certain offenses and defenses that require, you know, us to cover a pattern a different way, you got to kind of say, okay, do we cover the pattern a different way for this one time, or do we rely on the bank reps that we've had 1,000 times? You know, so there's give and take, right? Every defense has a void. Every offense has a void. So there's sometimes we're going to call a defense and they're going to find the void. That's football. What we are trying to eliminate are the fundamental mistakes: missing tackles in the open field, not getting off blocks, eye discipline, right? If we're playing man, I got to cover my man. Offensively, taking care of the football, blocking on the perimeter, eliminating some of these false starts and, you know, pre-snap penalties. Those are the things that we're trying to clean up because those are controllable. Obviously, like you said, there's some things that, you know, maybe our run game is better right or left, or our run game is better on the edge, and you try to window dress how you get to it to try and use your strengths. But there are some things that you just got to kind of say, okay, we're not good at this. Let's scrap it. Let's do this. It's a little bit easier on offense to do that. Defense, you can't say, okay, hey, don't run inside zone at us because we're not good at it. You know, just run outside zone. So there's different, I guess you'd say, philosophies both ways. But I think for us, we're constantly, we call it self-scout. We're constantly self-scouting ourselves to figure out what do we do well, what do we need to continue to work on, and then how are we going to get exposed if we don't fix it, change it, or move on from it.
Coach, where, who, and how in the offensive line have you seen them get better?
You know, I told the guys, it's crazy. We had to come to Jesus with that group in August because I didn't think they were physical enough. I didn't think they were, I didn't want them cutting our guys. But you got to have to me, offensive lineman, you got to shower every other day. Like, you got to have a little stank to you, you know, figuratively, not literally. You got to have a little edge, and I didn't think they did, and they responded really well. And I told them yesterday, actually, I told them, like, since that moment, you guys have worked your way into being one of the most consistent groups on the team. That's not just practice, that's meetings, that's the weight room, that's film review. And I think what has happened, Coach Coughlin has done a phenomenal job because we're playing musical chairs right now with some guys, and there's no glaring issues. I think obviously Blake Buster's done a really good job coming in under the circumstances. Greg Nunnery is probably one of the most drastically improved young men, you know, from the time we got here till now. And I'm not just talking about playing, he's always had athletic ability, but just he walks around with a smile now, like he's confident now, you know, I mean, he's starting to like kind of come into his own. You know, Brock Roman, Carlos Slayton, you know, Luke, Cooper's been in there, Krill's been in there. Like, we've had so many guys, Maui's been in there. We've had so many guys that we've had to kind of move around, which is a good thing. We've got guys that move around. And you really haven't seen a drastic drop-off. And I think I credit Coach Coughlin, I credit Coach Gibbs, I credit Coach Anderson. You know, you know your deficiencies, you know your strengths, so you call the game to your strengths. I think that's built confidence with that group. Now, don't get me wrong, there's still things they need to improve on. Somebody's gonna get banged up here in the next 3-4 weeks, whatever it is, maybe the day of practice, or somebody else is gonna have to step up. But I think they've done a really good job of embracing the no name, no face, we just work, we grind, we get back on the bus, we go home, we show up, we work, we grind, and it's paying off. And I told them the other day, I said, it's paying off. The work that you guys are doing in the dark, that no one's gonna see. They don't get Sunbelt Players of the Week. They don't get you guys writing stories about the one drive block that sprung the long run. And that's typical, right? We've lived that forever. But I told them I think they're doing a really good job of consistently working to go perform well.
So far as special teams, how do you feel like that unit has kind of grown, and where do you think the trust level is with Reed and Jack?
Yeah, I think getting Jack back will help. Obviously he had a family situation that he's back now, and that'll help because that'll allow Reed to kind of focus on what he does well. I think Reed did a great job for us, kind of double dutying. That'll allow him to focus on what he does well, which will allow Jack to focus on what he does well. They're different style kickers. When I say kicker, meaning punters, so it changed a little bit how we cover, changed a little bit how we align, gives us some flexibility now because we know they both can do it. And it also has allowed us to, we've been able to play a bunch of guys on those units. So there's some blind depth being created, which you guys don't understand what that means. Like, there's some guys that are playing on those units that if they have to go in the game because they've played on those units, they're gonna have a little bit more experience. There's some linebackers that are playing a lot on, everyone talks about Chris and Mike, and they're doing a phenomenal job. But if you ask them, Harpo, Sledge, and Haygood are humping just as hard. They're playing on special teams. So when they do get in and they get their 10 or 15 reps on defense, they're a little bit more experienced than they would be if they weren't playing. Some of our DBs are doing the same thing. So I think it's helping us. Obviously now we got to start to kind of really hone in on who plays on what unit, who's really good at certain things. But the first couple of games, special teams has given us an opportunity to create some blind depth, and we've been able to create some plays. We blocked a punt a couple weeks ago. We got some punt returns that are starting to go. We haven't had as many opportunities in the kick return game just because of where the game's gone now. But I feel really good about where we are.
Anything else? Coach, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Safe travels down to Statesboro. Look forward to seeing y'all down there. Southern Miss?
Thanks, Coach.